I'm going to be talking to you about the market is the market. And really, our markets are driven by what happens in the world. World events have made development uncertain. World thinking has changed the way we behave. All of a sudden, people are saving. Credit is bad. And surprisingly, you can't spend your way out of a bad situation. A dollar that's saved won't be wasted. And when it's spent, if it's spent, quality and service is extremely valuable. The fundamental challenges to development this year are pretty much the same as what they were last year. Funding is still difficult to acquire. And for purchasers, there's still no compelling reason to buy. Really, the only change is that these difficulties have gone on for longer than expected. And there's a growing realisation that these difficulties will be here for some time into the future. The market is what it is. It's not greener somewhere else, it's actually brownish. And if you want to operate in it, you need to be grounded, you need to get back to basics, and you need to make decisions that are based on facts. Building for profit is about creating certainty in what is an uncertain thing. And I think you can create certainty by relying on your wisdom, your intelligence, and then leveraging off that with technology. Wisdom comes from our experience, and it's something that you get over years. It allows us to pick the shortest paths. It allows us to be entrepreneurial, and it also allows us to choose the right networks. It's something that you develop, but it's also something that you can plug into. Intelligence, and here I'm talking about intelligence from the market. It's gathered, it's measured, and it's researched. It's analysed and it's recorded. Intelligence is factual, it's logical, and allows us to make rational decisions. Technology provides leverage, allows us to leverage off our wisdom and off our intelligence. It allows huge amounts of information to be analysed, broken down, compiled and recompiled. And most importantly, it allows us to reassemble it in a complexity of ways. And all the time doing it extremely fast. And speed in development is something that's very important. If we can get into a project and out of a project quickly, it's a far more certain place. So today, I'm going to share with you some of Mitchell Brandtman's wisdom and some of its intelligence. And I'm also going to demonstrate how we leverage off technology to make those things work for us. My discussion and how I want to approach things, firstly, we're going to look at the market trends in a similar way to what we have in the past. So we'll look nationally and then we'll drill down. We'll start looking at Queensland and closer into southeast Queensland. You're bombarded with this sort of information at the moment, but I'm going to show it to you in a slightly different way. What I'm interested in is how the work evolves in any one year, not what the change is from 1 month to the last, or what the difference is from this year to the last. I'm also going to share with you our intelligence, and here we're looking at real project costs. The costs that I'll share with you are at the maximum 6 months old. The projects are all under construction now, or about to commence construction. And we'll look at those in detail for apartments that are less than 10 levels, and then I'll just summarise the information to do with subdivisions and townhouses and houses. For people that are interested in the complexities that I went through last year, you can contact us, email us, and we're happy to share the detailed spreadsheets that make up that information like we did last year. In technology and leveraging, we'll look at design and how 3D design has really come to the fore. What that means to me as a quantity surveyor and how I use it to determine 5D costs. And then finally, we'll look at some demonstrations, how we leverage off technology to create certainty. So, market trends. I mentioned before I look at them a little bit differently. My wisdom is about, you see something that happens in sales, right? So sales is what drives everything. If we see a sales rate starting to increase, we'll then start to notice a change in approvals, and ultimately that will come through to the building. So the way we'll look at these stats is what's happening in approvals, and then what's happening on the ground in terms of construction itself. The concept is that what I'm interested in is price. So it's construction price. Don't confuse this with where the development market is. Because construction is one of the good news things at the moment. It's highly competitive, and the reason for that is because contractors feel that they'll have less work on their books next year than what they'll have this year. And this is what maintains the competitiveness in the market. So looking at approvals, and even this notion of the grass is greener somewhere else. On the top left, we've got New South Wales, Victoria on the top right, and Queensland down the bottom. This information is the same as what I showed last year. So the blue line is what construction prices are doing and how they closely relate to what residential construction does. The red line is non-residential construction, and there's a tight nexus between these two things. Looking back in history, this sort of period here, so that's sort of the largest bump. Thinking about what was happening then in residential construction. In Brisbane, Kevin Seymour was putting together Admiralty Towers. David Devine was kicking off with Cathedral Place. Mirvac was building its first apartment tower in Brisbane. So those were the types of things that were happening at that time. It was really the commencement of apartment living within Brisbane. That caused a lift in construction activity, but not significant enough to push costs. Costs throughout the 90s in southeast Queensland were flat. A cubic metre of concrete was about $165 for almost a decade. And ultimately it had to lift. And that was what we saw in this period through here. So the build-up of what the properties that were sold in 2000 and 2001 flowed through the market, and that hit construction in 2003. This is where we have a lag. And that's what my role is to try and give you a heads up on when construction prices are going to shift. If they stay stable or just increase like they always do, that's cool. When we have a problem is when construction prices move quickly. What that needs is a boost of activity. Now, looking at what's happening at the moment, we know construction is falling away. We're reading about it all the time. The ups and the downs in the market is the effect of the stimulus package, and that's something that we've not seen before. So really all it did was hold things up, keep people in jobs, and the construction industry will start to shrink now. The story in New South Wales is similar, except it didn't pick up. It didn't ever pick up. It was underbuilt through the 90s, and it continued to be underbuilt through into the 2000s. So it never really kicked along like Queensland did in this period and like Victoria did. So it's one of these markets that's yet to really shift and perform because it is our biggest population in terms of its turnout. Victoria, the construction activity in resi is now starting to turn, so it's gone against that trend a little bit, but it's starting to wane. So that's the kind of story around the country in those three markets. What I see here is that construction's on the decline, and there's not really anything there that's alarming for me when I'm thinking about the future. Looking a little bit closer to home. So on the left, looking at housing approvals on a moving annual total basis. So it's the number of houses and townhouses and units less than 3 levels that are approved in any 12-month period. And just constantly calculate that month after month after month and graph it. The idea is it gives an indication of how busy the marketplace is in that any one past year. It's how busy someone is in the past and how they feel about the future that determines what the price is. The left-hand graph is housing in Brisbane, the red line. The green and the blue line is the Gold Coast and the Sunny Coast. For the first time ever, approvals on the Gold Coast are at the same level and tending lower than the Sunshine Coast. So there's some shifts happening in the marketplace. Again, that sort of information isn't showing anything very alarming in terms of prices. The top left is a place that I like to keep an eye on as well. That's just the specific Brisbane CBD area. So it's approvals for apartments within 5 k's of the CBD, which is the red line, and it's on the Gold Coast beach suburbs, which is the green line. And this is specific research that I buy. It's not available from the stats, and you won't read about it in the paper. But on the coast, for a number of there's been a few quarters where there's been no approvals whatsoever within that space. So it's a change. We saw this period where the Gold Coast very much overlapped Brisbane, but now it's come back the other way. And Brizzy's kind of steady. And you'll see that. There's actually a lot of cranes on the horizon around Brisbane. Looking regionally, so this is a combination of houses as well as apartments. And again, this is something that isn't really reported. We hear about the two-speed economy and what's happening anywhere where there's mining. In these areas, I monitor the centres of Cairns, Mackay, Townsville, Gladstone, Rockhampton, Hervey Bay and Toowoomba, and I produce this really cool spaghetti graph. But the trend of all those centres is the same. It's down. The only one is the black line, which is Gladstone, and which is strange because looking at our work in Mackay, we've got 30 projects on in Mackay, and that's a bit more than what we've traditionally had in that area in the last couple of years. So it's actually quite active from construction. But then on the development side, it just isn't really there in terms of sales. There's still difficulty in getting sales away, and the rates aren't that good. The real market that's showing some shift at the moment is Gladstone, but keep in mind it's a small space. There's only 700 houses built in Gladstone in a good year, and that will build up. But it's a very small market in the overall. So it's probably our shining light. I expect that we'll start to see shifts in Rocky again, and that we'll see shifts in Mackay, and we'll start to get a confidence back in those markets. But it's not there yet. Other things I like to look at is what's happening in infrastructure and what's happening in mining. The reason for that is because of this whole notion of the two-speed economy. On the top graph, we're looking at Queensland's highways and subdivisions. The blue line is the work that contractors expect to do. The red line is what they actually do. So the red line is their book value. The blue line is what they believe they'll be contracted to do. We've been seeing this trend now where I suppose the optimism in that construction space of infrastructure has been falling away. So the blue line's falling away. The red line has actually stayed kind of okay, but those projects are coming to a completion, and there's fewer new ones starting. So thinking about just that graph in itself and a price, so a subcontractor price. If somebody has a high expectation of the work that's coming and they feel like they're pretty busy in what they're doing, you're not going to get a good price out of them. When the reverse is happening, you're going to get a very strong price. So these are the shifts that are happening in the market. Mining is the bottom graph. So again, here we're starting to see expectation in mining lifting again. It's solely driven around projects that haven't happened yet. So these jobs are just starting to happen on the ground now and roll out. The red line is what they've built and what they've done. If we cast our mind back to what was the resource boom only a couple of years ago, again, then there was a high expectation of work, but the actual value of the work done on the ground didn't meet the expectations. I think we'll see this again, and I also think that it's something that will go away. It's going to be here for a short period. The reason I say that is because the two-speed economy can't stay. In terms of wages, so if there's a carpenter in Brisbane that's getting paid X amount of dollars, and at the moment in the mines he can get paid 3 times that amount, yes, he's going to move. But as time goes on, those things will come into line. Now, there's no way that the wages in Brisbane can lift by 3 times. The wages on this side need to come back. They will come back as soon as the value goes away in getting things done quickly. Because unlike what's believed, value for money is still important in mining. And at the moment, there's value seen in delivering projects quickly. So once that need of delivering it quickly goes away, we'll start to see the averages come down. The other thing to remember with mining is there's labour that comes from overseas. Working on a project at the moment, 50% of that labour comes from overseas. All of the plant and equipment is imported. So it's a slightly different space in the way it happens. I think that although the shining light is mining, the construction industry is big enough to deal with this capacity that's coming. The construction industry itself has built up and grown, and I think it's okay for capacity to shift to mining and that we can deal with the whole thing together. Looking at what's happening on the ground, this is unique research. How this is compiled is my old man, who started our company, visits every apartment project under construction in Brisbane CBD within 5 k's. Then he goes and visits all the ones on the Gold Coast, on the Gold Coast Strip. He estimates where that project is at in its construction and how long it will be to complete. The blue line, or the blue mass, is every apartment building that's under construction or contracted. So we're projecting forward to when it will be completed. The red line is where we are today. The yellow mass is apartments that you can buy at the moment. So not where registrations of interest are happening, but where you can buy, it's in that pre-sales phase. What I'm trying to measure here, or what I am measuring here, is what the actual apartment construction is, how busy builders are at that very time, and projecting forward to what they're likely to be in the future. What I know from looking at this for best part of 10 years now is our maximum line is trending down, our minimum line is quite sharply trending down. The reality will be somewhere in between. As we came up this rise, so as we came up this period, it was looking quite alarming, right? So I was concerned because we had pre-sale projects that were talking about starting here, and this was generating up. When we think about the construction industry's capacity, at the peak in 2005, we were building almost 5,000 units within that same area. At this period where we're coming through, we're starting to push up to that. So that's why I was concerned about where prices might go. In terms of wisdom, this area in here, in that lull, is gold. When you're going out to tender, it's a great place to be looking for a tender price. As you're coming up a rise like this, it's not so good. Something that happens in construction is even when contractors are pricing heaps of work, that reflects in their price. So it's not necessarily just what they're doing, it's when they're putting together lots of prices. Looking at the Gold Coast, and the only reason why I want to show this is because it's something I've never seen before. In the next 12 months, we may very well see no apartments under construction on the Gold Coast. And I haven't seen that in my 30 years experience on 16th of January next year. But yeah, I find that unique. One of those little golden spots is this one here. At that time, we were seeing high prices on the coast because it was on the back of this. But just pitching in there, which is about the change from when development on the coast was in the Broadbeach and surface area, and then it started down at Kirra, and there was a little bit of a lull. There were some builders that were looking for work, and that was a nice place to go to tender, where you could get a better price than just before. In this space here, not so good. The outlook on the coast, go for it. From a construction point of view, it's not going to be any problems whatsoever. And really, the decline in Gold Coast construction is what allowed us to do that higher level of construction within Brisbane. The other thing I look at is this trend between CPI and the building prices. The green line is the consumer price index. The red line is what building prices do. And again, this is research that we've been doing since 1970. What I've seen over the years is that there's a relationship between what the CPI does and building prices do, but over a long period. Along the way, they fluctuate. And it's these sorts of events that is my role to look out for. That jump in 2003, where prices shifted 20% in about 2.5 months. So it was an immediate reaction, a knee-jerk reaction to all of the work that was being sold prior in the lead from 2001. The effect on the development industry was all of a sudden build costs were far higher than what property had been sold for. So it sent projects into a spin. There were projects that needed to look at remarketing those units and go back to the market. This is the thing that we need to look for. A steady price is okay. A flat price is good. It's this alarming jumps that we need to keep an eye on. In terms of escalation and what's happened, 2008 we saw just 2.6% increase, and largely that was undermined by a reduction in prices later in that year. 2009 they went down by 12%. We saw more of a fall last year, a bit over 4%, and this year, surprisingly, it's been nil. Even with the effect of the floods and the other disaster and repair work, it just hasn't come to the market and had this big effect. Subdivision work is similar, not as strong. So the trend has been slighter in terms of its coming back. In terms of where I think prices are going to go, I think they're going to be pretty flat. And if there's any movement at all, it's not anything to be concerned about. We'll be keeping a check on it and making sure that there isn't a big shift later in the year, but I think it's going to be pretty good. The good news is construction prices. It's a competitive place. Only rider is in regional areas. It's very specific. So if you're building in Gladstone, even if you're building in Mackay, you need to be careful. You need to do specific research about who is able to build in that area and deal with how you might bring contractors from outside if you can't find appropriate prices in the town. So it's more of a specific strategy that needs to be put together there. So that's the wisdom that I suppose I have to share. It's about keeping in touch with the market, know where prices are, and while construction prices are going to be reliable and very keen at the moment, you still can't take them for granted. The market is tough. We need everything to go well. So from the construction point of view, you still need to have a cost strategy. You can't just chuck a project out to tender and expect that you'll get a good price.